Alright indeed. Yo!
Hello.
Hello, Kris. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you.
Thanks in advance for helping me out with deploying my app on Kubernetes.
Let's hope everything works by the end of the stream.
Yes, it should. I'm confident. You already gave me a bit of info on what we're gonna do, and we already did some setup, but yeah, let's figure the rest out while streaming.
Yeah, we only did some tooling setup and some plugins for IntelliJ, so nothing magical happening.
Okay, cool. Maybe you want to give an intro on who you are, or like what do you do in real life?
Okay, I'm Kris. I founded Triple D together with Guido Deschamps and Dominique Tilleuil. We did it after lots of discussions on the Socrates meetup.
That's how you founded Triple D. Like you just got to know each other, and then you're like, hey, let's start a company.
I already knew Dominique since high school, so we knew each other for a very long time. And I met Guido at Argenta later.
Right.
And we were always complaining to each other, and finally we got tired of complaining, and we said, yeah, if we really are serious about improving things, we should really start a company and try to do it in a more professional manner.
Cool.
So that's how it started.
That's really cool.
We develop software, so we all have a software development background.
Yeah.
And I've always had some affinity with servers and hardware and Linux and that sort of thing. Then it moved to containers because it was a hype. So that's why we all played Pokemon, because it was a hype. And finally, we had a customer with a need for Kubernetes.
Right.
They were stuck in manual operations for a really long time, and then they had a product that became more popular. And I was there developing their software, and then it was like, the Kubernetes stuff, and it would solve that and that and that. Okay, let's do it. And it took more than a year, but we moved all of their software to Kubernetes.
Cool.
So that's where my experience comes from.
Sweet.
But I am a software developer.
Yeah, you're still a software developer. Cool. What is the website of Triple D itself then? Because then I can spam it in the chat.
It's tripld.io, and it has some interesting blog posts.
Alright, there you go.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then let's have Nightbot spam our GitHub URL as well.
Okay.
How far up to date with the application? Well, actually, you don't need to know a lot of that stuff anyway, right? Because we're just gonna deploy the application somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And is it correct that you should only know it's gonna be a Docker container which hosts a Spring Boot app and then also serves static content and the REST API.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one container, and it connects to a Postgres database. That's about it.
Yeah, for deployment, the most important things to know are, and that's what I call the public API of Docker container. So the public API, it contains the port on which it listens.
Yeah.
So I assume that's 8080 because it's the default for Spring Boot.
Indeed.
What's also public API is the environment variables.
Yeah.
So that will probably be our GDBC URL.
Yes.
And other parts of the public API can include volumes, but since this is a stateless container, it's not part of the public API.
Yeah, Heroku also doesn't support volumes, so I don't have any anyways.
Yeah. Well, it's only important for the Postgres.
Okay.
And for the Postgres, I've set up something using the Zalando Postgres operator. And as soon as we get to that part, I'll explain to the audience what an operator is, how it fits into the Kubernetes ecosystem, and then we'll use it to spin up a database. We'll use it for a local app first, and then we'll move on from there.
Great. All right, cool. So where do you suggest we start now, and then?
Okay, so the first step might be to maybe give a quick demo of your
Sure,
application
yeah.
starting up.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Maybe I can use the production URL then.
Yeah,
It's gonna take a while, I think.
maybe it's also important for the audience to know what triggered me to offer my help.
Yeah.
It's I joined the stream while you were deploying to Heroku,
Yes.
and then I saw you writing some code that was needed for your specific deployment.
Yeah.
I thought it was in the application code. In the end, it wasn't. It was in the.
It's in the Docker file itself. So we've got a Docker file of our web app. Well, actually, in this part, I think it was. I'm not even sure anymore.
So
Yeah.
that's-
So here, what gets exported by Heroku when you're using the Postgres RDS service of Heroku itself, it will supply an environment variable called database URL. This is not a JDBC URL.
Yeah.
I then found some gist who had bash scripting to extract parts of this URL
Yeah.
so that I could then define it as a Spring data source URL, username and password and port. So the port is necessary for Spring Boot.
Yeah. Okay, so what I think about this is now we're actually molding our container for a specific cloud environment, while it should be the other way around. We should have a cloud agnostic Docker container which works fine locally using the environment variables that we want to use. So now they were leading in providing the database URL property.
Yeah.
It's just we shouldn't conform to their system. It should be the other way around.
Right.
They could have probably solved it using some configuration and say, hey, we're going to provide you a database URL. How would you like it? And that they provided some templating that would move this complexity to their system. But with Kubernetes, it's not a big deal to.
I think it would have already helped if they would just split up this entire database URL into the different parts of it. I mean, like, why didn't they just do that?
Because
it would have solved so much already.
This is per technical accidental complexity.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks again for helping me.
You're welcome. Okay. Can you? You usually don't run it using the Docker locally, right?
Yeah. No.
Okay,
Yeah.
So. Maybe quickly show me the app running from the IDE.
I think hopefully it. There we go. So this is production right now. I don't know if it's okay visibility. Let's just show you main functionality, so you can host a competition. Right now there's 2 of them here, so we could create a new one saying the Kubernetes competition or something. We select some dates, you didn't really care, and then you get to select some challenges or whatever. So this sort of needs to be reworked a little bit. Eventually you can say I want to add some challenges, like maybe deploy to rotate ID or something, which is going to give us 6 points. Epic deployments happening, stuff like that. I don't know. We do save. This is what stuff I implemented this week. So all of this stuff, and then the editing, also deleting, same. Then you can eventually say we want to start a competition. After we added some competitors, then you can still select, wait, I don't want to start yet because then I can't add or delete challenges or competitors anymore. So eventually you start a competition, and from here you can start completing challenges, and you can say who completed which challenge. And then that updates the scoreboard. That's basically it.
Okay, nice.
That's all we got right now.
maybe we can add an interesting challenge for ourselves. And
Yeah.
in the RDS, can we get a Postgres export of the existing data?
That's a good question. So I would have to navigate to Heroku somehow, or like connect to it.
Yeah.
I've got no idea how to do that. Honestly,
How did
no
you
idea.
create the database?
You go to Heroku and then you click and then it's there.
Okay.
So maybe there's I can fetch the database, I guess.
Yeah. You have a URL for the database, right?
Yeah,
you
sure.
can connect to it.
Yeah,
And maybe
I think
we
so,
can
yeah.
use like pg dump to create a dump and maybe import it in
Okay,
Postgres. Something like that.
Yeah.
Could be an interesting extension.
We could do that, yeah.
Hmm.
Let's add that to the task maybe. So I have this GitHub project thing where I can just change stuff and then
Mhm.
add tasks. For example,
So
take
the first task for
pg dump
Yeah.
to, and then we can choose not to do this later.
sure.
Import to what's the thing? Postgres operator or what?
Yeah.
From Heroku. Okay, cool.
Uh,
And what could be other tasks?
Setting up a new database. So a stateful deployment on Kubernetes. We'll do it the high level way, not the low level way, using the operators. Then we'll actually create a stateless deployment of your application of Effet.
Deployment of the Effet challenge web app.
Yeah, that will be a YAML file, and then we'll. I think if we have those three, we should have no. Okay, so we'll add a step where we'll make the stateless deployment available.
See you days.
That's that one. Make the stateless deployment available via a URL.
Available.
Yes.
That's it?
Yeah. So if we finish those tasks, we should more or less end up with your the same thing as your production environment right now.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then if we have time, we can push our to GitLab registry. No, that's something we will do in any case.
Yeah, we'll do that as part of the second step.
Okay.
Because otherwise we can't deploy it.
Okay.
We'll leave CI out of it for now.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
Jenkins might be a bit tricky. I don't have any Jenkins Kubernetes.
It's Travis, so.
Travis.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, no? It's just rebranding.
No, not at all.
Ah.
Jenkins is.
Travis CI is the one from GitHub.
I don't know even.
Yeah.
I think Travis is just something I know from, like, I don't know, like 6 years ago maybe. Like they were there before Circle CI, I think.
Mhm.
And then I started using that as a service. But now, yeah. I mean, there's Circle. There's so many CIs out there, but not the Jenkins. I don't like anymore.
I was confused with the Jenkins. Used to be Hudson.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. That was ages ago.
Yeah,
it really shows our age. Yeah.
Okay. So
first we set up a new database then, I guess.
Indeed. So Kubernetes. For those not familiar with it, it's a platform that allows you to deploy more or less anything. It has some higher level concepts. So a deployment is one of the most common ones. It's for stateless applications. It will create a couple of lower level concepts behind the scenes, like replica sets and eventually pods. Pods is the smallest unit that you can have on a Kubernetes cluster. Other higher level concepts include services for service discovery. We'll create one of those. ingress rules, which are basically web routes where you link a URL to services.
Okay.
We have a stateful set that allows you to scale stateful services. So if you want to
Stateful services.
stateful services,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So you can have a stateful set, and you can scale it to 10, and then it will create 10 directories. So there will be one directory for each deployment.
Okay.
And if everything is set up right, it can be a cluster of 10 Postgres nodes,
Right.
for example.
Okay.
You have a cron job, so you can define when the pod needs to start. It will run until completion, and then
Yeah.
it will stop.
Yeah.
And then there are persistent volume claims, so you can try to claim storage, like, hey, I would like to get 100 megabyte of storage. Depending on how the cluster is set up, you'll get a persistent volume that'll be the actual location of the storage. So it might be a directory on an NFS server, something like that. And what operators allow you to do is to take, because I often get into discussions where people say, yeah, but you should use managed services for that, and you can't have managed services on premise. And technically that's not really true, because the managed services, they, for example, from Elasticsearch, from MongoDB, for Postgres, everything you find in the cloud, it's also just a piece of software. And those pieces of software, you can just run them on premise.
Yeah, but then on-premise Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
indeed.
okay.
So that really takes away the work that you need to manage a database. It moves a bit to, you need to manage your operator.
Oh yeah.
But so it's not completely managed, but from your software developer point of view, you can already add databases to a UI, something like you would have used on Heroku.
On Heroku, then yeah, okay.
So
And when you say managed, what do you mean, like exactly?
managed, so you don't need to take into account the backup strategy. You don't need to take into account the upgrade strategy. It should be more or less zero downtime. All those things where you would need a deeper understanding of how to really manage it, it's done for you.
Yeah.
So it's managed for you.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because with Docker containers we already saw it, because the container was built by the people who knew which port it used. It formalized the public API of the container.
Yeah.
Now we're moving one step up in the abstraction, and we have bigger deployments that are built by the people from Postgres, or in this case Zalando, who really know how to run it, how to manage it, and we just need to click around in the UI.
Okay. So if I can summarize, then deployments are basically, so this is all terminology of Kubernetes, if that's correct. And deployments, they just signify something that is running basically, or like I don't really understand the difference between a deployment and a service for now, but maybe it'll become clear eventually.
Yeah. Well, a deployment, technically, you can deploy your application.
Yeah.
It will be running on the cluster, but nobody will be able to address it or access it. So addressing
like an instance more maybe.
A service is really for service discovery. So you can have something deployed, it will run, but nobody will be able to find it in the white pages.
Okay.
So or the yellow pages. So unless you expose a deployment as a service, it will just run, and it could be perfectly fine. For example, if you have a Spring Boot application that's running a Spring batch, you don't really need service discovery, because no one will ever need to trigger it.
I see.
It can still listen for messages, but that's basically it.
Okay, cool. Great, and then a pod is?
A pod is like the smallest
something that is able to run both a deployment and a service or something.
No, a deployment is actually a composition of pods and a replica set.
Okay.
So even a cron job will create a pod at that time. And a pod, for example, is your stateless application.
Yeah.
But technically it can run multiple containers inside one pod.
I see.
Yeah. Some of the examples are if you have a Java application and sometimes you need to I don't know, you what I used it for is you have a container that downloads some static files every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to pollute your Java application with it. You
Mhm.
basically just want to have those files.
Mm-hmm.
Those two containers can share the same volume, even if you don't have volume management between the two Docker containers, so that your Java application doesn't need to know how the directory gets filled. It's just there's a directory, and one container fills it, and the other one consumes it.
Right. Okay.
In service meshes, it's often used to inject HTTP proxy to capture HTTP traffic between the container and the service mesh.
Okay, and then a pod is used for that. That's what you're saying then.
Yeah, so you
Okay.
have one pod containing the well, it's not
proxy.
Nginx, it's the
HTTPD.
no, it's the one from Uber.
I don't know it.
Well, it's becoming really popular in
Okay,
the
yeah.
cloud native world.
All right.
And then you can capture traffic that way.
Okay. Cool. And then an operator. That's something. It's basically a sort of plugin for a specific type of service, maybe. No, wait. Deployment then. Because for example, you gave the example. Zalando has
The Postgres
an operator for Postgres.
Yeah.
And then there might be a different operator for I don't know
Elasticsearch.
Redis or something.
Yeah.
And then open source communities distribute these operators.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less, and it usually consists out of a custom resource definition.
Yeah.
So
It's like the glue between Kubernetes and then the app, basically.
Yeah. Indeed, and it will use the Kubernetes building blocks
Okay.
like pods behind it. We'll actually see a pod running for your Postgres that you'll create.
Yeah.
And they extend the API. So all these concepts come back in the Kubernetes REST API, and the Kubernetes REST API can be extended.
Okay.
So Postgres actually becomes a top-level concept on the Kubernetes cluster.
Because
that
of
we're
the
using.
app operator.
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise, you'd have to go through Kubernetes to manage it, basically.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
now, because of the operator, it gets exposed more directly.
Yeah. We'll
Ah.
actually be able to say kubectl get Postgres, and
I
then it
see.
will list all the Postgres instances running.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. And then ingress, that was it's like a proxy thing
Yeah.
for services.
Indeed. So you have a service, and then you say, I would really like that HTTP hostname when it arrives at the cluster routed to my
So
service.
it's also DNS then or something.
Technically, it doesn't really have to do anything with DNS. It's just listening on an Nginx, and if that name is used as a host name, it will route it to the service.
All right. Okay. Postgres. And then usually supplied by developer communities like Zalando's. There you go.
Yeah, Elasticsearch, they publish their own.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. Nice.
Okay, so
if it's okay, I'll just keep track of this somehow, like because this is my learning stuff today. Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Great.
let's start by opening up the UI of the operator. So,
Opening up the UI of the operator, but we haven't. Did we install that one? Ah, yeah. So the operator
is already installed on the cluster. So
on our cluster or on your bigger Kubernetes cluster.
yeah,
You already have you have the Postgres operator installed already.
yeah, indeed. So we're
Okay.
using a cluster that I sometimes use to give presentations.
Ah, yeah.
And as preparation, I already installed it.
Right.
Just to make sure that it works, because I hadn't used this specific operator yet.
Oh.
Okay. And then we can go into so I linked a URL, so we'll able to access it externally. So if you go to the demo and then to so maybe some context for the viewers. This
Yeah.
is Rancher.
Yeah.
So it's a tool that I use and that we use at customers to install and manage clusters. One of the big advantages of Rancher is that it easily integrates with identity providers. So I was able to give Tim a login using GitHub. So now I basically linked his GitHub credentials to this cluster.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
And then it does provide a UI which can be convenient. This is the basic overview of the cluster. It shows you how many CPU cores, how much memory. The blue bars is the reserved resources, because on Kubernetes it's considered as a best practice to actually reserve some resources for your application.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you put a lot of applications on one cluster and you don't reserve anything, it might be that the green bar actually explodes and you say, hey, but why did it explode? We weren't expecting this.
Mhm.
So the more in sync they are, usually the better you're doing it.
Cool.
We'll just use this now to find back the URL instead of typing in some commands. So
We were going to go to the Postgres operator now.
Yeah, so we're going to look for the UI. So if you hover over the demo, there will be a menu, and I installed it in the default project. So just click on default. And then we can already see some Postgres here, but we're mostly interested in the Postgres operator UI. So you can see it running here, and then you can see that below it says 80 HTTP.
Yeah.
And if you click it, it should normally open the ingress route. So below that link,
This thing.
yeah, it should basically just open the UI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a screen that allows us to create a new cluster. So let's
Postgres cluster.
yeah, a new Postgres cluster. So you can pick a name, whatever you want, for your Postgres database.
Jesus.
Yeah, you can call it Jesus.
Nice. Jesus. Acid Jesus.
Acid Jesus.
Okay. Let's do it. Where does acid come from?
From Jesus.
Apparently.
I think it's just the model behind the database, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it was something.
Owning team. Yeah.
It was something basic in the install instructions. So acid, it's like
okay.
atomic consistency.
Right. It's this.
Yeah.
I was just thinking it's like one of those generated things, like in Heroku. If you don't supply anything, it'll be like sunflower, acid, something else. You know what I mean? Like.
No.
So now it's acid.
It's database related. It's
Okay.
purely technical.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. And then we'll need a user, I think.
Yeah, indeed.
And then this is going to be the user supplied for the app.
Yeah.
So maybe we want to reuse the one or something. Yeah, I don't.
You
we really care?
You can actually make a couple. You can say I want one for my developers.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, let's just create one.
Affit app or something.
Yeah, and then
And then we'll also need a database.
Yeah.
And Affit app can be the owner, and let's just call it Affit challenge or something. Oh, no dashes.
Yeah, apparently. Okay, and now these are the resource reservations that we talked about. So the first one is CPU. You can see that like the request, it's 100 M. Probably doesn't say a lot to you, but it's basically 10% of a CPU. 100. So a full CPU is 1000.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the limit. It cannot take more than one CPU currently.
Okay.
And it requests 1 gigabyte of memory and limits it to 1 gigabyte of memory. So for now, I think we can run with these defaults.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's not that I have a lot of how you call it? Like we don't have a lot of users anyways. So I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and technically we should be able to change these later in
yeah.
the UI, and it should just work out.
Yeah, because it's a managed service, eh?
Yeah.
Cool.
So all we need to do now to create a database is create a cluster.
There's no password or something that I expected there to be.
There is a password, but it will be automatically generated for us.
Yeah.
And so Kubernetes, one of the other concepts is a secret.
Yeah.
And so it will create a secret in the background as well. And then we can use that secret inside the content. There will be a database password.
Okay.
But it will be auto-generated, like a password manager.
Alright. I can live with that.
Yeah. So if you open up Rancher, and in the same namespace, you'll already see your asset Jesus.
Yeah.
So you can click on it. You can even see that it has the icon of a database or storage.
Yeah.
That's because it's a stateful set. So depending on the type of deployment or Kubernetes concept, you'll get a different icon. So the one with the little boxes,
these
those are stateless deployments.
I see.
Yeah, the one with the disks, it's a stateful set. The one with the globe, it's what's it called
like
again?
A proxy or something, or
no, it's if you click on it, it will show the name at the top right. A daemon set. Yeah. So a daemon set, what it does is it guarantees you to run one pod per physical host in your cluster. So
it guarantees it. So it'll restart it when it goes down and stuff like that, or
yeah, it will do that. A deployment will also do that, but these are very convenient. For example, if you want to say I want to start gathering metrics from my machines in my cluster, you'll actually need to have one of those metric gathering containers or pods per physical machine.
Okay.
Or the other example is the HTTP proxy for your Kubernetes cluster. It's also a daemon set. Because you want each machine in your cluster to be able to handle HTTP traffic.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so your asset Jesus is already up and running. You can click it if you want. It will say it's the first instance, so it's 0. You can even what we're looking at now is the stateful set. It says so in the top right, and the pods that are listed is the 0. You can also click on that, and we might be able to see if it's one or more containers. So if you click the asset Jesus 0,
this one.
Yes.
So this is a pod that's running, and it's using the Zalando's Postgres Docker image.
Apparently, yeah. But if you click it, we will be able to see if there is more than one. Okay, no. So there's only one container in this pod.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So we went through the hierarchy. So stateful set, pod, and now it's the containers inside the pod.
Okay.
Yeah. What we can see here is the logs.
So if you go back here, then
yeah, and at the top right on the hamburger menu,
yeah.
you get to see the logs. So this is just Postgres log output leader election for if you
Yeah,
would go to
apparently,
a
yeah.
cluster.
Yeah.
You can close this. Because of the integration with Prometheus and Grafana and Rancher, you can even click the pulp metrics. It will show some graphs live here, so we already have an idea of the resource utilization. And yeah, I think this is all we need to get started.
Yeah.
You'd probably like a password for the.
Well, I'm gonna need to know the password for my Spring Boot app to be able to deploy to it. I mean, to connect to it, right?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing we'll do now is use port forwarding so that the database is running on the cluster.
Yeah.
But we'll quickly see if your app can talk to it and generate tables and that sort of thing. Or the first step will be in IntelliJ connect to it.
Yeah, okay.
So the only thing we need now is the password. So
Yeah.
if you scroll up, there will be resources in the middle of the top menu, and then secrets.
Is this gonna show these things
Yeah, but
on screen?
since they cannot connect to the database externally, we can just show the password. So nobody will be able to connect to this database directly because it's not listening on a physical port anywhere.
Ah, yeah, okay. Okay.
So this password we can share with the audience. They can even reuse it for their own accounts. It's perfectly fine. So there's a FIT app asset Jesus credentials.
Yeah.
So you can click it and it has a password and a username. So and it's even hidden now, but if you click it.
So that's the app, and then this is the thing.
Yeah, if you click it, no, you can't copy it like that. I think, I'm not sure.
What?
First you need to left click it, and then, or like double click it, and then you can copy it, and then it should be usable.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to now set up the port forwarding,
Yeah.
we'll use the command line tool,
Yeah.
the K9S.
Got some visitors. Hey.
Hey. Yeah. She usually does all the Kubernetes work at home.
I see.
It's my daughter for the audience. Okay, so we have the password now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Then we can go to your command line tool.
Yeah.
So we installed a really fancy, convenient tool,
Yes,
the
we did.
K9S. So this basically allows us to navigate around our Kubernetes cluster. And if you go to the colon ns, or just PO, so colon PO, I think we're still in the right namespace. So this is our asset Jesus. If you enter asset Jesus, we'll be able to port forward using Shift F. And then it's the 5432 port.
That we want to expose then, or here as well. Is it running on the port 5432 as well?
Yeah, but it's listening on 3 ports
Ah, I
apparently,
see,
so we need to pick
yeah.
the right one. So what we're doing is we're opening up sort of VPN from the Kubernetes cluster using HTTP to WebSockets, and it will proxy the connection.
Let's do this one because I
this
think
one.
5432 is already running on some Docker container, I think.
Okay, now we can go to IntelliJ,
Yes.
and you have like the database tooling,
Yeah.
and you can add a second one.
Yar. New data source. We'll select PostgreSQL.
Yeah.
And then it'll be Postgres at, well, Jesus.
Yeah, and that's localhost, and then we'll use the
This
actual
one.
port Yeah.
And then it was Effort Challenge.
Or Effort App, I believe.
Effort App.
Yeah, and then the password.
Paste.
Yeah.
Save
No,
forever.
No.
Yeah, this is not. It's not a Postgres. It's called Effort Challenge, I think,
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. Okay. And you can scroll down and click this.
Yeah,
actually.
there was. Where is it?
If you
There
there.
we go. Ah.
Okay.
No, wait.
Yeah,
there
that's
there
actually
was
a good thing. It says
there was a.
Yeah,
It-
yeah,
there-
okay.
no-
That's good. And also it said that it could not find the database, so the credentials were fine, right? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
See? So
There we go.
yeah. So you can see how little effort it should take you
Yeah.
to create a database on Kubernetes. If the operator is installed,
Yeah.
it's more or less like good to go immediately.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is really amazing. Like how easy it is to do port forwarding on for a cluster just locally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It allows you, for example, in a later stage, we'll need to debug maybe.
Yeah.
Then we can just port forward on pod, and if that works, then it must be somewhere else, and
Yeah.
move throughout the stack until we reach the HTTP route, for
Okay.
example.
Yeah.
And we have like full control over the pod. So if you enter here now, that's the log. Sorry, you should go back. And then we can also open a shell. So if you press S, and then we might see. So we get a nice prompt.
Yeah.
And
So this is the This is the Postgres Docker image being hosted at the Kubernetes cluster that we set up.
Yeah, indeed. So
Okay.
if you run the PS aux if, so you get a nice tree.
Is it -aux?
No, just AUXF. We'll get a nice tree of what's running here. So yeah, this is our container running on Kubernetes.
Cool.
Yeah. Something the viewers might also be interested in, because they're usually scared about losing data, or where's my data, where's my volume, because we're really used to seeing a directory with the physical files.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back one, just exit here, you'll go back to and then colon and do like PV. So that's the persistent volumes, and here we get a list of actual persistent volumes that have been provided to persistent volume claims. So the persistent volume claim, it's like, I have an app, it's stateful, and I'd like to claim 10 gigabytes of storage.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I'm going to use it immediately, but it's like the resource request with CPU and memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same for persistent storage.
Okay.
And then there is something on the cluster that gets the request and says, okay, I think I can get you 10 gigabytes, here you go, and it provides you a location. And the location is an actual persistent volume. So this is what we're looking at, and you see that we have one for the Acid Jesus. And if you enter it, you actually get a really nice information where we provided the data. So you can see the IP of the NFS server, and then the path is really the path on the physical storage.
Yeah, okay.
So now we have the data for this Postgres, which we can still back up or do things with, or see the actual database files, just like with a local install of Postgres.
And then was this set up by the Postgres operator?
No. The Postgres operator expects something of storage to already be in place.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called a dynamic provisioner,
Okay.
and it's even easier to install than an operator. It's just you need to configure the IP and the path where you want the storage to automatically be provisioned.
So what I'm just thinking, because I've got a little bit experience with AWS,
Mm-hmm.
and like AWS, as far as I'm concerned, has all of these different things that you can configure, including volumes, but also RDSs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also run a Kubernetes cluster on AWS.
Yeah.
Does Kubernetes in the background then use all of the different AWS services for that, or is it just like an instance of a Kubernetes cluster? How do I need to view that? Like, where's the analogy there?
Yeah, I don't know the intimate details of their implementation.
Okay. It's an implementation of AWS of Kubernetes cluster then.
Yeah, if they would use their services behind, they can plug them in.
Yeah.
So, for example,
Okay.
you and it's probably already there. I haven't used it yet, but I assume that there would be a dynamic provisioner for S3 buckets.
Okay.
So each time you ask
Yeah.
for a volume, you get a new bucket.
Yeah.
The thing is, sometimes you want to have some control over what you get. So an S3 bucket would not be suitable for a Postgres database.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So you can actually give classes, storage classes,
Mhm.
to the persistent volume claim that you want. And you can say, I really need fast storage for this. For example, Elasticsearch needs fast storage to
Mhm.
perform. So you can have different types of storage and then just have your app pick up on classes and you will get that type of storage. But it's abstracted away.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't even know if you're talking to an S3 bucket or an NFS share or something else.
Yeah.
You also have local storage provisioning. So if you really have local disks
Yeah.
on your node, you
Yeah.
can perfectly use those
Right.
if you want.
Yeah.
You have full control.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm just trying to think about how Kubernetes is going to be more helpful to me than maybe AWS or something. One thing that I already knew is that once you've got your app running on Kubernetes, you can just choose your cloud provider, right?
Yeah. Because the API is implemented by all
I
the
see.
cloud
Yeah,
providers.
okay. And then the other benefit will be that management of your cluster will also always be the same, because if you know Kubernetes, then you know Kubernetes on AWS, you know Kubernetes on Google Cloud,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Then I think I already understand a little bit about the benefits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Indeed. It allows you to be more portable between clouds.
Yeah. Okay.
And there are
And you can run it on premise.
You can run it on premise and you can do combinations.
Yeah.
So you can go for a hybrid cloud. For example, with Rancher, what we did at the customer's place was we had a couple of nodes on premise
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of nodes were accessible via VPN connection on
Mhm.
Google Cloud.
Okay.
And you can label nodes
Yeah.
and then use node selectors for your deployments, and you can say no, it should not go off premise. So I want it, and then customer name, and then it's only schedules the loads, the workloads on the local nodes. And then you can say I don't specify any node selector, and then Kubernetes will schedule them wherever he has the most resources available. Or you can say, no, that should run on Google, it should never impact our hardware.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so now we've got our Postgres running on the Kubernetes cluster. We expose the ports locally. We are able to connect to it using
Yeah.
the credentials provided. What's the next step?
Let's actually try to get the application locally connected to the database to see if it creates the tables.
So we'll just go. So why wouldn't it be able to do that?
It could be an access rights issue, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So
So-
if the user that was generated via the Postgres operator doesn't have enough access rights on the
Yeah.
database, then it won't
What
work.
we could also do is now create a table,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah, okay, I like-
yeah. One thing, a downside of the port forwarding is sometimes it runs into HTTP timeouts. So it's possible that if you create a new table now, it might fail.
Because the port forwarding connection is
Yeah.
lost,
Yeah.
and then we need to
Just restart it.
restart port forwarding again. Okay, let's just try and create a new table then, I guess. Table. Let's call it Our favorite name for something is snarf, and then we'll add some columns. Name, I don't know. It's
Sure.
a varchar or something. Yeah, there we go.
This
This
should
is
be fine.
this is fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Execute. Connecting to, updating, introspecting.
It's still. Oh, it already.
This is localhost.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay, it would have been really magical.
Yeah.
Okay, so it failed. See? It's
Okay.
confusing
I
now.
wasn't looking at it.
So.
So we'll need a new connection then. So that's going back to.
Yeah, there are two options. Either we do it again using K9S, or
Mhm.
because we might need to do it more often, we might use the kubectl command.
What's the difference?
This here we always need to navigate to the pod before we can do the shift.
You mean you want to have a re-executable command? Okay.
So this is a very convenient UI, but for the case that
Yeah.
we're going to hit now, it might be.
All right.
Okay, so it's kubectl space port dash forwarding one word. Yeah, and then without the ing. Sorry. So just port forward and then space and then you might be able to tap completion. Oh no. Okay. So it was the acid dash Jesus dash 0
Yeah.
space and then 5432 colon 65.
Cool.
Yeah. That should be it. Yeah. So now it's port forwarding. And it's the
So
same
now we
notation
can-
as Docker.
Hmm.
Not doing it.
Apparently not. Maybe I didn't save it though. Like, remember when we were in that screen?
Maybe
No.
disconnection.
Disconnection.
Okay, go back to the port forwarding. Can you Control C and then kubectl get PO.
PO.
Yeah, that's the pod. Okay, so the name of the pod was right. It's at Jesus 0. No, it was fine. So 654
6543.
and it should be the same in IntelliJ, right?
Yeah.
654.
That's so weird. Like, why didn't?
Yeah.
Maybe we can try running it through the Kubernetes thing again. The
You still have
K9S.
K9S open, right?
Yeah.
You should, do the colon pf. We might need to delete the port forward here because no, it's already gone.
Okay. I see what you.
I thought it was still listening on the port local.
Yeah. Let's try and do port forwarding again through this, and then see if that makes it work again. I guess because then we know it might be something with the kubectl.
It shouldn't, but yeah, okay.
And that
it's a
was
good test.
NS.
Colon PO.
PO for pods.
Yeah.
And then just Shift F right now, huh?
No.
No.
Enter once,
And then
shift
shift
F.
F. And then this
Yeah.
to this,
Yes.
and then that's that.
Okay.
Activated. And then we can test connection.
Okay. Well, should be exactly the same, but whatever. Maybe our namespace wasn't correct. So the kubectl command works in the namespace that you're currently in.
Yeah, which is demo supposedly.
No, the cluster is demo, but yeah, since we did the PO, it should actually. It's very strange.
Okay.
Maybe it's 6543, and then that we got
the other way
ports,
around.
yeah.
Okay, let's try that. Because now we need to close the ports on the
It's,
other
quote,
here.
yeah. So
And that was
colon PF for port
port forwarding,
and
and
then
then
D for to delete the port forward.
or control D.
Control D.
Okay. And then we'll just do this,
Yeah. Okay.
and then we'll. Ah, yeah. Now we can see it
yeah,
actually.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a derp on our
Okay.
part. Okay, cool.
I usually use the same port, so then you only need to specify one number.
Ah, yeah. I see.
And
All right. Here's
yeah. Okay. Now
the
create the table.
database, and now we just need this. It already looks a bit different though. FitDB I call it, and the other one.
Yeah. If it
And then there's no public schema.
Yeah.
There is a
but
public
yeah.
schema. Okay. There's
So
confused. Okay.
you can-
Let's do a new table then. Snarf with
one column.
name, which was a varchar. Then I don't know. Execute.
And then you can use F4 to insert some data. Okay.
And then commit. I don't know by heart.
It takes auto, so it should already be.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah.
This looks great.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we can delete this one and then have our app run against this. So we could just do local host, I think.
We could, but now we can also just deploy the application, right?
Yeah, I'm a bit. The only thing I need to configure is effort challenge, because I know that the database name is already different, right? So that's gonna have to be. But what do you mean with deploying? Because deploying the Docker image
Yeah.
onto Kubernetes. Okay,
Yeah.
let's do it.
And we'll probably the first step we'll use a GDBC URL,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll use the Spring Boot notation then.
Okay.
We can even get the password from the secret if we really want to. So the secret is already defined in Kubernetes,
Yeah.
and you can have an environment variable reference a secret, and it will get the value directly from the secret, so you don't know it.
That sounds good. That sounds amazing. Well, why don't we do that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll do that, but of course that's already 2 steps ahead. But it's quite simple, so we can do it in one.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
So now deploying. Well, actually, hang on. Because we can do something now. We can go to here and then we can click on this.
Oh yeah.
Right? This is finished now, right?
Yeah. Unless you want to rename the database using the managed service.
This is fine. I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
Okay. Then this is fine.
Yeah. Next up, creating
yeah.
a stateless deployment of the Effort Challenge web app.
All right. So we installed an IntelliJ plugin. So if we now create a YAML file inside IntelliJ somewhere,
In ops.
sure, whatever. And
How do you call it?
There's no default name. You can say deployment of YAML.
Okay.
Okay. And now we'll need to IntelliJ. I thought we had Kubernetes plugin. Can we add a Kubernetes file? Because it usually
What
should
is a
show
Kubernetes file?
It should show a Helm, like the boat logo, the Kubernetes.
Okay. Maybe it's called differently or something.
Well, you can actually try to say API version at the top of the file.
Is it dash or something? Or?
No, a capital V.
Oh.
And let's hope that IntelliJ is looking at the file and say apps that /v1. So this is the Kubernetes API. So
Okay.
it's the content in the file depends on the version of the API.
Ah, yeah. That
And
makes
then
sense.
the kind, what we're going to create now is really a deployment, so capital D.
Oh, now it knows it. Look.
Yeah, it's already becoming smarter. Yeah, okay.
And
So
now we've got all the completion.
yeah, that's what we need.
Very
Yes.
nice.
Okay, so IntelliJ is now aware of that this file is intended for Kubernetes, and what we're going to write down in this file is basically where can you find our Docker container, and for now the ports. So
Yeah.
so you can add a spec, so that's the specification of the deployment. And then it's
Damn it. I was trying to. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so the selector you can add now, it's just the Effit app or something. So it's so the selector everything in Kubernetes works using labels. So like I already explained, you can have labels on nodes, and then you say, I want my app to match that label. So the selector now matches the specification to the metadata of the deployment. For a deployment is a composition, and the labels are used to tie all those things together.
Okay.
So the spec.
So it's like you sort of tag all of those things so that they're all part of the same label.
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed. So it's called match label in the selector. Yeah.
So there needs to be like a thing
match
here.
labels.
Match labels.
And then it's app and then colon. And then I don't think you need quotes, but you might need a space. Yeah. Okay. So and then you actually get like the IntelliJ references where it matches and where it doesn't. So you have it in the left side of the IDE.
You mean like here or?
Yeah, and it will.
The matching label definitions.
It will probably not have a matching label yet.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So now you can.
Template.
Yeah. So the template is what is used to create pods. So it's a template for a pod when you're scaling. So the deployment allows you to scale, and then it will use this information to create instances. So if you go in there, you will have again a spec. Yeah. And you can say it's the Effit app. So now we're really going into the container territory, and it also has an image. And the image is the fully qualified name to where we pushed your Docker image before.
So you created a GitLab Docker registry. Wait, no. You gave me access to your GitLab Docker registry.
I gave you access to GitLab, which has a built-in Docker registry to host it in a public way.
Yes. Instead of Docker Hub, because it would have, whatever.
Yeah, we
and
could
then
have used Docker Hub. But
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that one was something like a registry.
Yeah. Perhaps you can just open GitLab. It will be easier. There is a copy button.
There was still a thing here. Oh, such lag. Here we go.
So if we go to if we refresh this page, it should actually list your images.
But we haven't pushed an image yet.
Ah, okay.
So
then we need to run those two commands.
Oh yeah. Okay.
In your
in my Docker, in my apps Docker folder, basically.
You need a new laptop.
Because it's going.
Do you have power connected to your laptop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. But then I think maybe streaming. No, that's so OBS is taking up 22% CPU now.
Okay.
Like, where's the other? Where's the 80? The rest of the percentage.
78.
Let's go into ops and then paste. I think. No.
If your Docker file is here.
I forget. No, it's in the web app. There it is. So now the exec Java thing still has the parsing of the image URL.
Yeah.
I mean the Postgres URL.
Yeah.
From Heroku.
And it's not really an issue right now because it's just creating new environment variables.
Yeah.
But
It might if
okay, let's remove it. Let's just comment out the script that you run now in the Docker file.
yeah.
So the script is still there, but we don't need it anymore.
So that's the exec Java thing. And here we had
Just go in the Docker file and comment out the call to the script.
yeah, but then I still need to do this, right? So
Indeed.
we could I should have extracted this into something
Yeah, it's a single responsibility violation.
yeah, indeed.
Or you just take this out now and move it inside the Docker file.
That's exactly what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
So my command will be this. Correct?
Yeah, and it currently won't run the exec Java.
Yeah.
If you want it to work again, you'll need to change the command again.
This we don't really care about anymore.
Indeed.
Just
wait,
checking that there's nothing else happening with it.
You'd better remove the backslash at the end of the last line.
Yeah, why was that there actually?
No idea.
Oh, because there's an enter here. Like, I don't know. I guess. I really am not sure. So, Docker file is fixed.
Yeah.
Let's run a build.
Your jar is up to date?
You might want to first update the jar indeed. Yeah. We can do that by doing a Gradle clean boot jar, I think. I might need build and then boot jar, but I think boot jar
will do the build.
Will do the build, yeah.
Probably has a dependency.
So then after that jar is updated, we'll need this build statement again. Alright, cool.
Will it put the boot jar inside the ops web app directory automatically?
Good question. Good question. It probably won't. But there, see, that's what happens if you put too much stuff in that Gradle thing. Like, it becomes difficult to follow. So, yeah, we might have.
It's doing it because it's copying it from the build directory into the web app directory.
Yeah, this task does it, and this is the task in build.gradle, right? But there is one here, which is an empty one for some reason.
No, it's still opening it. There's a progress bar. Your laptop is just having a hard time.
Very hard time. Yeah. Maybe I really need a new one or something. I don't know. Now look at the CPU is increasing as well. Like it's 30 now instead of 20. Like for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
It might be because it's running a build now though.
I hope the CPU doesn't increase with the amount of users, because otherwise
the viewers.
Yeah,
no, there's no way.
No, I'm joking. But otherwise we need to scare them away.
I see people quitting. By the way, hi. Say hi in chat. Don't be shy. Build successful. Let's see if it was indeed. So if you can
check the timestamp.
Ops web app.
You do have nice ASCII icons. That's not the latest.
Yeah, it's not. So let's. Wait, it's not. I was looking at Docker file. Yeah, my bad. So then we'll need to
cp from the build directory to.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's other stuff that was being done there, like No, I only need the jar thing. So I think there is just a task in here
Mm-hmm.
that we can use to say, let's just do copy web application jar, I think, which should be enough. So
Okay.
if I actually, why am I doing it outside of Gradle? I can just do it from here, right?
Yeah.
That was not very smart. So copy web application jar should then just copy it now, I think, unless there's dependencies there.
No, it's also.
No, it's doing another build again now.
Yeah, because it depends
Because
on.
of yeah,
Yeah.
because depends on and then
Yeah, but Gradle is usually pretty smart, so
yeah.
probably won't take that one.
But I'm not sure if it's that smart when using npm tasks as well. I'm not sure. We'll see. Doop de doop de doop. See, it is running the UI build again.
But
Well-
done.
Good thing I don't have many tests.
I think we found an argument against TDD.
Alright, so now it's building stuff again, and then hopefully eventually it'll copy the web app jar into the web app folder, and then this one will be new, and then we can Docker tag that stuff again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the fun part about having set up a pipeline on Travis, for example. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff anymore, right? Like, it's just, I mean, in the end, we're also only just doing this once, just to check that the jar will be able to connect to the database, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's also stuff that I did when I was trying to deploy on Heroku, which took me an entire day, by the way, and then some.
To deploy on it.
To deploy on Heroku,
Oh.
yeah, that sucks.
Mm.
Cause
Now I'm scared because we haven't deployed on Kubernetes yet.
yeah. An actual entire day, like 8 hours, I mean.
To deploy automated.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how hard it is with Travis, because I've been using GitLab more or less exclusively for the last 2 years, and there it's extremely easy. So yeah,
Yeah, you'll be the second person selling me on GitLab on the stream.
well, I'm not really trying to sell you.
Yeah, no, I
just
mean
think
I don't
easy,
even matter. Like I was gonna say, so now it did update it. I did say, like, on the previous stream as well,
It's already done.
then that I needed to check that out. So
Yeah. Well, now you have a GitLab repository.
yeah, indeed.
It does builds, so I host a GitLab instance myself, but the CPU cores, they're like two 10-core CPUs, so 20 threads, 40 threads in total, but they're only 2.1 gigahertz. So for builds, they're not the fastest.
Yeah.
But
On your GitLab, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
and this was also convenient because now you're on the local network and the same network as the cloud provider.
Right.
So it's faster.
Yeah.
I don't like waiting. So.
Yeah. So for you, this really helps. I mean,
Yeah.
to run it on prem. Okay, so now if I refresh, then
You
there should be an image there.
Yeah,
There we
so
go.
you can click on the little. It's a hierarchy, so you can. Okay.
Okay,
And it's
latest.
tagged as latest, so
Yeah.
you can click the copy icon, and you have what you should paste in the Kubernetes YAML file.
Nice. The deployment
Yeah.
YAML file.
Yes.
And then it's this one,
Yeah, indeed.
Sweet.
Then we'll need to define an image pool policy. Well, technically we don't need it. We just need to define our ports now. So add a new line, type ports, environment than just 8080.
Yeah, because I think the Docker file does take in the port argument. The other Docker file takes in a port argument. It did with this, but then it's not used anymore now.
No, you can't do that. You can do it in a shell script.
It's just you need to only expose it. Ah, yeah. So these things, Heroku would also expose a port environment variable that you had to use. Yeah.
They're really dictating everything. Okay, yeah. No, we can listen on whatever we want and then adapt to that. So yeah, this is fine. I think this might be more or less the only thing we need now. Okay, so we need to specify the GDBC URL. Okay, so we can add another line and we can say environment.
Underneath.
Jump back.
Where? Like in
here.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the environment for or env.
Yeah.
This. Yeah, and then we can specify now what Spring Boot actually wants.
Wait, so these are environment variables that are going to be available while running this image?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, jongen. Wait, yeah, of course, it sort of makes sense. So now we can do... I don't
whatever
know
Spring Boot needs.
Yeah, but do you remember it? Like,
no, I googled
data source URL or something.
No, I'll
but
Google it.
wait, I think I might have it here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. I had it correctly already.
Oh yeah.
And then it needs this and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's for now copy paste the entire thing and then we'll
All of them, you mean?
no, just the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, because it said username and password.
Yeah, you need them.
You didn't want to specify. Okay, okay. Let's do them all.
And then it was dash name.
Yeah, name and
then
colon,
that would be
and then a space after the dash. Yeah, okay.
And then this would be the
at the then enter after that.
Yeah.
So and then
key or something.
no value, but it should the colons at the beginning should go away.
The colons in the beginning, the dashes.
Yeah, the dashes. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
and then the equals can go.
The equals can go.
And then here we've got just a string, or
yeah. So let's just now say it's a Postgres.
Sorry.
Postgres instead of DB type.
Oh, right.
Let's start filling out some of the. Okay, and then the DB port will be 5432. And then the database. It was fit challenge.
Yeah.
And the host. Okay, so now we're going into the service discovery thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to Rancher, and I haven't actually checked this yet. So Rancher at the top.
Rancher. This is the UI.
One to the left.
Here.
Yeah. And then go to workloads and services. I expect there to be a service for our database as well. So service discovery. And there's an Asset Jesus service. So that's...
Wacht, hang on. So when we used the database, the Postgres operator, it created the deployment.
The pods and
stateful
also
deployment thing for the Postgres, the
Yeah.
pod, and then a service for service discovery.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
And so the service discovery, Kubernetes uses namespaces to manage the service discovery.
Okay.
And if if you want to look up something in your own namespace, it's easy. Then it's just the name asset Jesus. If we would deploy it in the same namespace.
Yeah, so my would be the default namespace because that's the namespace for the demo
Yeah, that works.
Kubernetes
Yeah,
cluster.
yeah. But if we would deploy the app in a different namespace, we can still access the asset Jesus database. We just have to say asset-jesus.default because the namespaces become top-level domains.
Okay.
So what we can do now is just say that the database host is asset-jesus, and we can even say .default. And if we deploy in any other namespace, you will still find this one.
What do you mean if we deploy in any other namespace? Ah yeah, then you've specified the namespace and you will actually from one namespace
Still find it.
to another,
Yeah.
do the asset
Yeah.
Jesus in the default namespace.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Indeed.
see.
Well, what I usually do, but now it was a bit tricky. We still use a lot of databases that are not on Kubernetes, and then
What do you mean? In your
in my
day-to-day
day job.
Okay,
Yeah. And what I usually fill out here is what I want to use as a database, and then I just say here Postgres and then DB and then colon 5432.
Ah.
And then I define what's called external service,
Yeah.
and you can just specify an IP or an existing host name, and it will resolve off cluster and connect to a database that's not running on Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So that's what you could do, for example, to also connect to your RDS or something, and then it will look like a Kubernetes service, but actually it will be something running completely separately.
Okay.
So
Alright, and then the password you already said we could
we-
just
yeah,
expose it,
yeah.
but
Okay. So well, let's do it because it will not be hard. So you can Kubernetes and you can say get environment from secret, and it will show me some YAML how to do it.
Google. You mean just Google stuff?
Yeah.
Maybe let's do that
I
as well.
don't
So
know
you do
by heart.
Kubernetes get password from credential.
From secret.
Secret. Okay. Configuration / secret.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do this.
You're just creating a secret manually, but then that was already created,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I found it, so we can just now specify, so instead of hard coding the value,
Mm-hmm.
we can say value from. So in the YAML, or you can search here for value from. You should be able to find it. Value from, okay. So yeah, you can basically just copy paste
here it
this.
is.
So instead of specifying the value, we'll reference a secret value from a secret reference,
And what is then the key of this thing?
yeah, we had the username and password inside the secret. Do you remember?
I don't.
Okay, so just copy paste this, and then we'll go back to Rancher.
Or it should be somewhere here, right?
Yeah.
So instead of value, it should be value
Yeah,
from, and
indeed, and we'll get the name and the key from Rancher now.
then yeah.
So in Rancher, we can go to resources, secrets, and the name of the secret is Effit app asset Jesus credentials. So that's the name. So you should already copy paste it.
I see.
And we already
then
see 2
username.
keys. So yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So
And-
this is the name, and then this is the password.
Yeah, and since we're doing this anyway, let's copy paste the value from
Yeah.
to the username too, and then.
Sweet.
So this is what we need to start running.
And
Okay,
then, so this is the config file Kubernetes needs to deploy. Like, what does it do with this stuff actually? Why do we have a deployment YAML? What are we gonna do with that thing?
We're going to kubectl apply it. And then we apply this to our cluster. It's also an incremental application, so if we change one of the options, it doesn't necessarily need to recreate everything. So
it'll be smart about it, and then
indeed.
Oh,
so if you open the terminal in IntelliJ and you kubectl apply -f this file.
Oh, I'm in UI. Sorry. kubectl -f.
No, first apply and then -f. And then the YAML file. Yeah.
That's it?
That's it. Okay, doesn't have additional properties. Okay, so it probably needs some more information.
What do additional properties mean? Replica set list.
Yeah. So like I said, this is deployment is a composition. It contains data to make pods. Apparently, we're missing some properties that are used for the replica set. So we might need some metadata on the spec. So now we only define the container. So if you go back to spec underneath template,
yeah,
you can add
underneath containers then, or
no, above containers, but below spec. And then there you can also put a selector. Wait, template. Oh no, sorry. We already have that selector.
Yeah, it's this thing here.
Yeah. But we might need. We don't have any metadata on our container, so we need to link this to that. So underneath containers, yeah, you were right. Just add the metadata. No, it's without the
dash.
Yeah. That's okay. So metadata, it's not autocompleting.
No. And
sorry, it's underneath
underneath
the template. So right above spec. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's one of the big downsides. And then it's labels.
Yeah.
And then it's the same as the one above. So this is our actual app.
Here we don't have a...
No, also
you
app.
also need app.
Yeah, so it will match. Okay, let's try this. No.
Same error actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think we'd need to do something with replica list now. So.
Yeah, well, I only have one property directly related to replicas, and that's underneath the top level spec. Say replicas 1, because we only want one instance right now. So. Okay. And then perhaps underneath the deployment, and then it really matches this file, say metadata. Yeah, and then also give it a name, so like the effort deployment.
That's it?
Mm-hmm. And sorry, then the labels also the same app. And then every level is linked now. Okay. Doesn't work now, we'll just throw away Kubernetes.
Let's throw away Kubernetes. Maybe it's a namespacing thing?
So it's not XML, so selector, match labels.
No, it's just I don't understand the message.
Yeah.
Replicas, maybe it's not a v1 thing or something, or...
No, it's metadata labels. So that part we definitely...
Image pool policy we didn't define.
Yeah, I don't think it's strictly necessary, but you can. And then we have a replicas, and we have the selector which matches labels, also on app. Then we have a template metadata, also on labels. Okay, and then spec containers, name, image, ports. Yeah, you can try defining the image pull policy. Set it to always.
So that is image pull policy, always capital Y. Let's run it again. Ugh, just typing all of stuff except the right one. 9.
Okay, let's Google this.
This error.
Yeah. You know you can right click and then search Google.
No. How do you do that?
Just right click on. You need to select. Now
Then
right click and then it will. Okay. Maybe I custom installed something. It allows me to Google from here.
Really?
Yeah, because you often do that.
Yeah, indeed. That's exactly what I'm doing now. So. Schema.
It could be. I'm on 1.14 now with the cluster, so maybe
But
click it. And then
Yeah, but then this is unable to install Flannel.
Yeah, but they also use descriptors. So even if it's another app or deployment, they might have run into the same issue with. See. Okay, so we saw that you already had a kubectl client.
Yeah.
I think it might be a bit old.
Okay.
So and then Brew told you to link the new one. So this is 1.10.11 and the cluster is 1.14.
Yeah. It
So
says it has 2 versions of it. Oh no, client and then server version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you'd actually upgrade your kubectl now, Brew upgrade kubectl, and then it was complaining that it there was already one and that it wanted to relink it.
Yeah.
And it gave you the command. So if we run the command now without asking any further questions.
Cube 1.15.1 is already installed.
Oh.
So wait, when did we get that? Like I thought it was when we installed
Yeah, in the
Cube
terminal.
9 or something.
Yeah.
I think it must have been here, but I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, trying to go. Oh, you can click by Control C.
Oh.
Can you scroll up?
Oh yeah, I can also scroll up, of course.
I hope it saved some history. It looks like.
Yeah, maybe it was in another one.
No, here it is.
Thanks for following Noj02. Welcome to the stream. Here it is.
Yeah, and then Brew link override. This
override.
one. Yeah. I really hope it's your machine and we don't run into other issues.
So if I now would do kubectl version.
That's better. Okay, so now
Now we've got a newer version than your.
It should technically not be that much of an issue. And if we kubectl apply again, it should just. Oh, hey, it was
nice,
blind. Okay.
nice.
All right. That's
cool.
good. Now, if you go to Rancher, you should actually be able to see your application deployed. If you go to workloads, and then workloads again.
Huh?
We see the effort deployment, and it's already running. So okay, it came red. We'll investigate that. Yeah, you should click it.
Does not have minimum availability.
Yeah, because it's dying for some reason, and it's probably if you check out the log now.
How was that again? Did you click it here or
yeah,
something?
and then you can see the log. So we see Spring Boot running, starting, and then Flyway Initializer. Okay, so there's
claims to not accept JDBC URL. It might be a different one. It might be like maybe it's PostgreSQL instead of
yeah.
Postgres.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is a there used to be a time where you can use just Postgres.
It's possible. Yeah.
I forget. So now this
you can just go to the YAML file again.
To the YAML file of what?
Of the deployment.
Yeah.
And fix it here. So type QL.
Ah yeah, it's right. It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apply it again. And instead of created, it will say configured. So if we go there now, close the logs. It's already running, and it's not with. It's still with Siren. Okay, we need to check the logs again.
Oh, it's only now updating.
No, it will constantly restart.
Found non-empty schema public without schema history table. Right, so
okay.
it's because we already created that table in.
Okay, so you can throw it away.
Yeah.
You can just port forward.
Oh.
Yeah, you need to port forward it because we'll probably have time.
Okay. Where did we set that up again? In one of these things.
One.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. And then we just refresh this one.
I think it automatically refreshes if you.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, damn it.
Okay.
Sweet.
So now,
and
we go back to your app. It will have an empty public schema. Yeah, these logs, they will disconnect as soon as the pod gets killed. So you'll need to open them again.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
yeah
so
I know
it was constantly...
And it was retrying?
Yeah. So you can see that it tried to restart it 3 times.
Yeah.
Because the process got killed at the end. So the Docker container got killed.
Yeah.
And the deployment knows, hey, I need to scale to 1. I always need to have 1 instance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's constantly spinning up a new instance.
And how many times is it going to retry? Like forever or
forever?
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, until it reaches a green state.
Oh sheesh.
Now he did it, so it's running on Kubernetes.
So now we need an ingress that forwards.
Well, that's already one of the next steps.
Ah.
So to check now that the app is running, we can use a port forward.
Ah yeah, of course. So we could. So if I'm correct, then we could. This is already set up, or it lost connection to pod. Why did it?
Probably because of time. Not sure.
It's pretty fast, I know.
Pretty fast, yeah.
So that will be the name.
Yeah.
There was a way to do that, like with PO. Nee.
Yeah. Get PO.
Get PO.
Yeah, we'll actually see.
Or is it?
Yeah, this is get PO. So now there is
I have a deployment with some.
Yeah. So that's what I said. So for a stateful set, you usually get names that makes sense, like SFGs is 0 and 1. But for this, they constantly get started with different names.
It doesn't make sense to attribute IDs that you want to be persistent because it's stateless.
Yeah. So you can now do
80, 80, 80, I guess.
Then you only need to specify 80, 80, and the other one is.
Now I'm thinking if there's something running on 80, 80 now, I don't know.
Just try it, we'll say port in use. Okay. But you typed too much, you could have done with 5 characters less.
Optimize all the things. Hey!
So this is now your application running on Kubernetes with the database.
That's so cool.
Okay.
It makes sense because it didn't run with the local profile. Otherwise, there would have been a competition available already.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool!
Yeah.
Dude, this is so cool!
Yeah. So it's pretty convenient. So there's a lot of knowledge that you need to have.
Yeah.
But if you have somebody who knows it, it usually should go pretty smooth.
Also it builds on the knowledge that I already had. So I knew about having to configure my Spring Boot to some Postgres. I knew about managed services. I knew I had to configure stuff using a deployment script somehow. I
Yeah.
didn't know the syntax, but whatever.
Yeah.
You can look that up, I guess.
Yeah.
But now it's like running and stuff already. Like,
Yeah.
the principle is very interchangeable with other cloud services. Huh?
Yeah, definitely. What you can do now is you can basically scale it if you want. You can scale it to 3
why not?
instances.
Let's do that.
Yeah, it's kubectl scale and if it deployment tree or something. Yeah,
So kubectl,
scale, and then
and
two,
then
2 dashes replicas, and then a space. Yeah, sorry, the 2 dashes and then not a space replicas.
okay.
Yeah, it's a parameter, and then a space, and then say tree, and then
But then you need your identifier of
yeah, but that's if it deployment, so that's the name that we gave it.
of the label. Nee. Of
The
I
name.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be it. Okay, then it's deployment space effort deployment. Yeah.
Instead of replicas.
No. So before effort deployment, say deployment. So you need to say, hey, the name of the deployment is coming. It's not a
This?
and then space. Yeah. Okay.
Lol.
So if you do a get PO now, keeps it. You have 3. See? So
What?
they're already running. So they're 9 seconds old and they never restarted because they just work.
That's cool.
So, something you could also do is I don't know. Is there any logging when you get a request that's incoming?
Probably, I'm not really sure actually.
Okay. Yeah. So you
I don't
can
know. I don't know if I set up the logging properly on my Spring Boot. Like I don't think there's metrics on. I didn't add an actuator either, so.
Okay, because we can actually also do something really neat with the actuator if you
Oh, yeah?
want. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I haven't added it yet, so it's just a dependency you need to add, right?
Yeah, but there's something really neat about Kubernetes because we already talked a bit before the stream that you have concepts like AOP, so aspect-oriented programming.
Mhm.
Those things exist on Kubernetes,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that it allows you or allows developers to do, that's us,
Mm-hmm.
is to add annotations to our deployment, and we can say, hey, come look at me, I have some interesting data for you. So if you have the actuator, you can output it to Prometheus format, and if Prometheus is running on the cluster, you can add an annotation and say, hey Prometheus, I have some data for you, this is the path that you need to use, this is the port that you need to use.
So it's like a broadcasting thing to Prometheus specifically, but then Kubernetes picks it up somehow, or what?
I think it's Prometheus that scans for the annotations. And it uses the Kubernetes API to see, hey, is there a deployment that I need to go and have a look at?
And when you say annotations, I'm thinking of like add stuff in code.
Yeah, it's literally.
So it needs a dependency though.
No. It's in the YAML file.
It's in the YAML file you need
yeah,
annotations.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
To do more instrumentation.
Let's add that to the task.
What then?
I think it's more interesting to show that than to actually go to
CI deployment. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but you can add the task, and then the next thing we'll do is add an HTTP route.
Yeah. You mean add a task in
Git
here?
up.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
It's
done.
Yeah.
This is the
That will
ingress
be
part,
the-
I guess.
Yeah, indeed. You might do later.
Docker.
Yeah, Docker. they're
It knows that it's becoming
Yeah.
obsolete.
It's like, oh, you're using Kubernetes? I have an update for you.
I am here. Please look at me.
Okay, so you can edit that.
Just a second.
Okay.
I need to add a marker so that I know. And
Docker being
attention
ridiculed.
whore. It's just text for myself that I know. Okay.
Yeah, so let's add the task.
Right.
Add some really fancy metrics. Yeah, but put it below the next one. I want to do that one
Okay.
first.
All right.
Okay, so now you have a deployment, and we talked about it before, that's not even available via service discovery. So we have 3 instances.
This is
running.
why we just port forwarding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
indeed. So
okay.
the first step happened. Now we need to make our application available first to the cluster. So if we go back to the deployment YAML, and then just go to the end of the file and add 3 dashes at the beginning of the line.
It might be the beginning of the line, but we don't know because it's presentation mode. It is the
It's
beginning
a
of
bug?
the line.
Okay.
No, I mean it's not very visible. I think that's why.
Okay. Yeah, okay, and then below that we go for API version v1. So, and then it's kind service. I don't think it's in the apps namespace, it's really just in the root.
Ah.
Yeah, so a service is really the highest level of a concept. Service with a capital S. Yeah, okay. And then we'll add some metadata and we'll give it a name. And it's the if it's service.
Service.
Yeah. Okay. And then we'll go for the spec.
So does it need a label now again as well or not?
Yeah. So
And now it could be F challenge web app label.
yeah, indeed it will be.
Right?
Yeah. So but not here. So first
okay.
the spec, because it's really the instance of the service, and that will have the selected, and it will
Allee, I wanted the auto completion.
it should.
Wait, before it suggested stuff.
It will still.
I mean above.
It will still.
Okay.
If you type S now, it will select it, yeah. And then app.
And then app.
Yeah, and then control space, will it? Yeah, see? So now we're creating a service, and if you actually click that, you will jump to the position in the YAML where it will find the spec for the application that it will be the service to.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the way we did the metadata. I mean the label.
Yeah.
Now we're using the label from the deployment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And now the only thing that we're going to add is which ports that it uses, because a service has a port as well.
Okay.
So ports, and then it's 88. And you can specify target port underneath as well. So you can do port mapping here too, if you would like.
So we could map to 80 just, right? Because that
We could.
then we don't need the colon 8080 in our regular URLs.
No, that's another concern.
Okay.
So that's Ingress, and
Okay.
even if this would be 8080 and target port would be 8080 as well, we can still do HTTP routing where you don't know which port you're using.
Okay.
So it's because, for example, the Postgres service that we're using, you can connect to it on 5432, and the pod is running on 5432. But I
Yeah.
could also make a service that's listening on 10,000 and routes it to 5432 of the pod.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. Okay. So you do that.
typically
So-
you just use the same ports here.
Okay. Yeah.
So port, and I think you need to specify target port as well.
So that's here as well. Then?
Yeah, and also 8080. So
Okay.
this is the port of the service,
Yeah.
and that's the port of the pod.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and then since we're able to find it now, we can add the ingress. So add
As a different
so
next.
3
How do you
dashes.
call these things?
dashes.
Yeah. I mean. Damn it. These blocks of API version stuff. Do they have a name? Like, because you could say that this is a class or something, if you would apply encapsulation.
I'm not sure. You can split them out into different files.
Yeah.
This is the extensions v1 beta. I think it's still not. Typically, you start from templates as well. You usually don't do it this fine grained.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And there was a next step to this as well, which is Helm charts. When so
is that dashboard stuff? Helm?
no, Helm is like a package manager for Kubernetes. like apt-get for Debian and Linux and
Okay.
Ubuntu,
Yeah.
you have Helm.
Yeah.
And now we're doing a pretty simple deployment, but in the
Yeah.
end you might still want to template a bit of this. So depending on some of the features you want or wouldn't want, you want to change things in the YAML. And Helm allows you to template this.
Holy crap.
And then you can deploy those to a repository. And that when it, for example, the operator is a Helm chart. So you have like one-click install.
Ah,
sort of thing.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, young.
Yeah. You have huge.
I had no
Helm
idea of
repositories.
the ecosystem at all, apparently. Oh my god. Okay, that's nice. I like all of the tooling around it already. I mean,
Yeah, but if you go and the JetBrains ticket in their ticketing system, I don't remember the name. They have on their own track.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. Though, yeah.
Anyway, the Kubernetes ticket for the development of this plugin, you'll run into a huge wall of text that I wrote.
Yeah, you wrote. Okay.
I have people at JetBrains typing code for years to come because of that wall of text. Okay.
Nice.
This
So it'll also need something like
one,
metadata then, I guess?
give it a name like my
Fed ingress or
yeah,
something
sure.
maybe?
yeah, and then it will also take a spec, and this spec will become rules because it's
And it doesn't have a selector for the app then.
no. It
So you
will
don't
have
really
a
need to
it will have a service name inside the HTTP rule.
Ah, okay,
So,
and
yeah.
that will refer to the service we
yeah,
just defined there.
So
Rules.
and now you can just say host,
Yeah.
and it will be fit.demo.rotateIT.db.
This is the one you want.
yeah. This is
Fed dot.
demo.rotate-it.be,
Yeah.
and then we'll add the HTTP, and then the service name. It will autocomplete. Oh, it will not. Damn it.
Maybe because port is there.
No.
Let's give it a ch-
Then it's just your FIT service and ADA. Okay, see, that's why you need to give them walls of text. Yeah, so now we're saying if we have HTTP traffic coming in on our general HTTP proxy of the cluster, we would like that to go to, and also the paths, I think you need to put a backslash because it's on the root. So,
Does this need another one? I mean, path?
yeah. And then the backend will need to be, the dash needs to be removed.
yeah.
One space. Yeah. So the root will go to the FIT service.
Mm.
And here you can also say /FIT,
Mhm.
and you can start doing composition with different services.
And then one more like this, the host is limited by, you said the general proxy for, no, I forgot.
So demo.rotate-it.be is a complete cluster, and there is a reverse proxy before that, also on a Kubernetes cluster, but that's a detail in this case. And the wildcard for demo.rotate.it, it has a let's encrypt wildcard certificate. So if you actually go to that URL now,
Just this one.
it should give you a service not available or something, but it should already have HTTPS. It will put it automatically because okay, so it did not find it, it didn't say service not available, but this is fine.
Yeah.
As soon as you kubectl apply now,
So this is because you've got something set up that anything in front of demo.
will go to that cluster.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start creating routes,
Yeah.
it will
They'll get
handle them.
matched.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, that's a bit
That's because I did Command T probably.
okay.
Well, I wanted to do Command T on Chrome and it registered on IntelliJ
Yeah.
while I was still doing this.
Okay.
So now we just redeploy. I mean, with
apply one minus
this
it.
this one.
Uh,
Maybe
So-
how do you get rid of the the other. How do I reset scale to 1 now? Is it just this
Yeah, you
and
can
then
say
replicas 1?
Yeah. But
And then-
you can keep 3. Nobody would care.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm not gonna use 3, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, it will actually use 3 because if you go to the HTTP route, it will do round robin by default.
okay.
Yeah. So you just decreased your availability.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. kubectl
Apply minus
apply.
F, and it will see that it has 2 new resources, so 2 will be created. One is
Yeah,
unchanged.
because we also didn't do the service thing
and
yet.
you can already go there. It's like an instant change, and then you can use your app.
Jesus Christ.
No, that's the database.
This works so fast. Here, Chrono Luminaire using Terraform or Ansible. I don't think we're using any of the above, right?
No, we're just
this is
using
just Kubernetes scripts.
pure Kubernetes.
Where did you get the idea that we were using Terraform or Ansible? Is it just because it looks alike? Maybe that's why? I think Ansible I know for sure, that's also like a YAML format, but Terraform I don't really know.
Could
It
be.
Might also be YAML, I don't know. It's just a question, okay, that's fine. Cool! So indeed, it's just Kubernetes.
Yeah.
The Kubernetes script, what do you call that thing?
This is the Kubernetes notation in YAML because you can do this in JSON as well.
JSON as well, yeah.
And apply it against the cluster. It's
Yeah.
this is for me one of the you can even do this using kubectl commands and not write a YAML file at all.
Yeah, of
so
course.
you can say kubectl create deployment and then just specify a Docker image. It will create some of the boilerplate for you.
Yeah.
But because we were planning to do CI, it was more interesting in doing files.
Yeah, of course. It's more reproducible anyway, yeah?
Basically, the commands should also be item potent and that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
but I mean, like, if you want to redeploy to a different cluster, then this format would be the same.
Yeah,
you just
otherwise
have
you'd
to
run
use
the
some.
same kubectl commands. But yeah.
Yeah, okay, true. Yeah. But now, like, we've got one file with everything in it.
Yeah, and it's more comprehensible.
Yeah. And I see why it makes sense that this is all in one file as well. Like maybe to read it as a deployment, then a service, and then an ingress, that also makes sense.
Sometimes your deployment becomes that big that it makes sense to start splitting it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the ingress can become more complex too if you want to do certificate stuff right here. It's all possible.
Okay.
You can. You can actually also using annotations on the ingress do a lot of tuning of your ingress implementation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you ever ran into the issue where Nginx was preventing file uploads from completing because they were too big.
I've had that happen with
max file upload
Tomcat.
size.
Because Spring Boot runs on a Tomcat itself,
Mm-hmm.
and then it has configuration as well, so it will just cut you off if it's too large.
Yeah, indeed. So if you Google Nginx ingress annotations, you'll actually see your first example of Kubernetes annotations. So
Anything? This one?
Yeah, that one. It's fine. You get like a lot of options that you can use in the annotations tag to set. For example, if you want to add basic authentication to your application, you can do it using ingress. So let's
Where does it go to then? Because if it's basic authentication, like where do the users reside? Where's it stored?
This would just be one username password.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So it's the most basic form of basic authentication that you can use. But for example, custom HTTP headers, so you can have pretty pages that are decoupled from your. So all of this you can just tune using, or you can do permanent redirects for an ingress, and it doesn't even need to go to a service. So all the things that you want to do with an Nginx, you can do it using the Kubernetes API.
Yeah. I'm still curious why they are annotations though.
Because you can't put this in the API because it's Nginx specific.
Ah,
So,
yeah, of course. So they sort of like extended with these annotations.
So
yeah.
they scan for this metadata. So what happens when
So-
you apply the ingress route?
Yeah.
The Nginx proxies see that a new ingress is there. They will read all the metadata, for example this data, and they will rewrite their config file. So each time a pod is spun up, it rewrites config.
Yeah.
Also, if you scale to 3, then the config is rewritten because internally, then it knows it can do round robin, and it's the Nginx doing the round robin.
So Nginx is behind Ingress then as well.
Yeah, and also there is no black magic. If you would go to Rancher, and then go to the system, or you can use K9S, whatever you prefer. You might have a preference.
Well, just
You
that
choose.
we are here now. It's
Okay,
fine.
click on the demo and then go to the system namespace.
System
Yeah.
namespace.
Yeah. And then there is the, if you go down, there's something saying Nginx, Ingress Nginx, and you click on the controller. So we can see the globe icon, which I said is a daemon set, so it's running on all the nodes in the cluster. This is a single node cluster, it's not a best practice, but perfect for what we're doing. And then you can open the shell. So yeah, execute the shell. And then you can just, I think does it have less? I'm not sure. No, yeah, you need to cat and then like etc nginx. You're already in the directory, so it's just nginx.conf. Sorry, yeah. So this has been rewritten each time you do an ingress, and if you grep for like effort, you should run into some pods and some.
I already forgot what the config thing is called. What was it?
So cat
you do-
nginx,
yeah.
and then pipe symbol grep.
Just F it or what?
Yeah. See, so you find back the server name, and you see that this is in the config file. And if you add some of the annotations, you will see it rewriting this config
Right.
file, and you can check the result.
Yeah.
And you can kubectl config, kubectl cp, the file that is generated to your local machine as well. So it doesn't matter if you want to see the file? Or?
No, not really. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
that's nice though.
Nothing is black magic. Everything is pluggable and debuggable, and that's the nice thing about this.
Now I'm still a bit confused where Rancher comes in. It's more like a management thing for
Kubernetes.
more Kubernetes clusters then, or
It installs your Kubernetes, for example,
yeah.
but
So-
it can also sit on top of managed Kubernetes instances, and then it ties in your security. So if you click the cow at the top left,
Click on the cow.
yeah,
Let's click on the cow.
or it might be a bull.
I'm clicking, but
It's not doing
anything.
Then click on global. Yeah, I would assume that the cow would go to global.
Ah.
And you can say add cluster. So even if it's my rancher, you can still add a cluster,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to go to Google and spin up a cluster through rancher. So then you need to add your service account, and you'll just see your Google cluster visualized here.
Ah, yeah.
And you can give other people with GitHub credentials
Yeah.
access to that cluster.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to. I'd probably be able to see it because I'm an admin, but I'm not sure if I would be able to do any administrative actions like remove nodes.
So how did you set this up then? Is it
I'm-
just Rancher running on one of your boxes here? Or
it's Rancher running on Rancher OS because they have their own operating system.
Okay.
On VMware. So what I use is vSphere for the on-premise setup. So if
okay.
you click vSphere, you'll probably get like a bunch of options. And if you want to create a cluster, you just say, hey, for example, say admin, and then you can say etcd and control plane, and you can see that it's already saying for etcd, which is their distributed key value store, they need 1, 3, or 5 instances for high availability, and you need a odd number because for the quorum. And then you can say add node pool, and you can say worker, and then you can.
And then you need another one, right?
A worker, yeah. And this would create.
Yeah, because now we've got one. Yeah.
Yeah. So this would be a more production-ready cluster, because now your workload that you're spinning up, for example, if you by accident scaled it to 1 million instances, and it's running on the same node as where the admin services are running, they can get killed. So it's better to separate those two concerns.
Yeah, of course.
But as you can see, it's still really easy to spin it up here.
Yeah.
And you can do the same with Amazon or Azure or Google, and then it will just use their APIs to create them.
Yeah. Holy.
Yeah. Rancher is a really nice product, but basically for what we're doing to deploy it, it's a detail as well.
Yeah, but I would like to. It just helps me get more context on why Rancher is a thing. You know, like because I saw Kubernetes stuff with the apply and all that stuff. Rancher has nothing to do with that, right?
No, but
it's just a way to manage a cluster more easily.
Yeah, indeed. For example, they added the monitoring, and it was called like the second day operations, because the first day is you set up your cluster, but then you need monitoring. So with all the graphs where you can see the actual resources.
Yeah.
And
and then Amazon has that as well. For example, like they've got the dashboard or I don't know, but I just see Amazon EKS here. So Amazon will probably have their own dashboard thing for Kubernetes then, I guess.
And probably they have some support for linking their user management to the cluster.
Yeah.
But for example, if you want to link your local Active Directory to Amazon, it might be harder, and Rancher could make it easier.
Yeah, you can do that with Cognito and then link through there. Yeah, whatever's. Holy. Dude, that was amazing.
Yeah, so we can check off that task.
Take some boxes.
Yeah.
And add some really fancy metrics.
Yeah, let's
using.
Do that. Yeah. Okay, so
wait, because I have got I did add some stuff, so maybe we want to make a little commit though. So maybe not the captain's log. I don't know what I did here, in fact. Oh, I didn't even commit this yet. Let's do that first then. Added autofocus on name when editing a challenge. And then we'll add the Docker file along with the deployment, I think.
Yeah.
Because the Docker file killed the exec Java thing, and then deployment YAML we needed
will it automatically deploy? Because otherwise you break your production.
No, it will only deploy on if I push to the prod build.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is set up on Kubernetes. That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Right, and then I'll need to change my Gradle script, I guess, to include the
actuator.
The actuator.
I'm opening up an example because actuator, it's it gives you metrics. But we need to have them in the right format now. So
you need to do some config or something on the actuator metrics or what?
Yeah. So you need the Spring Boot starter actuator.
Something like this, probably.
Yeah, indeed. And then for the Prometheus format, it's actually so what Spring uses now for the actuator, it's micrometer. And you need like the.
That's from Drop Wizard.
Yeah, they use the same thing now, I believe. So you need to add the io.micrometer. And then the micrometer registry Prometheus with dashes in between. Okay. So this will give us metrics, and if you can run this locally, just so we can actually browse to the page.
Yeah, if it ever finishes resolving.
Yeah.
Just wonder if you've been off screen this entire time now.
Yeah, I've been at the edge. Okay.
Okay, I think it's finished, so I'll run it in just regular mode, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think we still have that port forwarding set up to
We don't-
8080.
We don't need to.
No, because it will fail
it will have
otherwise.
killed, yeah.
Damn, I'm amazed at how fast this just works.
Yeah. This will also work out of the box.
Yeah. What is Prometheus, by the way? Is it something to Kubernetes, or is it something else?
No, it's from the same ecosystem. So you know the CNCF, right? The Cloud Native Computing Foundation.
I do know now.
Okay.
I didn't know about them earlier.
Then I'm going to show you a really nice webpage to see
Okay.
how big the ecosystem is.
Ah, yeah, okay.
But it's like the Apache for Java with all the frameworks and that sort of stuff. It's that, but for the new generation of infrastructure.
Ah, okay.
And Prometheus, it's like InfluxDB, and they're a new generation of databases called time series. So they really made
but that's
for
a format time series, right? Like I want to say Cassandra. Cassandra is also time series database.
It's possible that they support the same thing, but I don't think it's necessarily a format. But it's made for registering the same data at certain intervals.
Yeah, yeah.
So Prometheus is a popular one, and it integrates well with Grafana to create dashboards and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is output a format that Prometheus likes, so it can scrape.
Yeah.
Then we're going to manually visit the Prometheus page now, so it should be running on 8080. And if you browse to /actuator/Prometheus, maybe it will work out of the box. Otherwise, we'll need to add some.
What was it again?
/actuator, and maybe try that first. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. So it has some health things. These also have other relevance for Kubernetes. If we wanted to, we can, for example, if the application becomes unhealthy, have checks running from Kubernetes to see if it gets a 200 OK, and if it doesn't get it, it can automatically restart the application. But for now, we're going to go to /Prometheus to see if we get the format, and that will give us things like memory. Okay,
but it didn't recognize the URL.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got forwarding set up so that I can just refresh a page because I've got view routing.
Yeah, you're doing a redirect.
I'm doing forwarding of certain URLs.
Yeah, okay, let's fix this. One of the things is you don't actually want the actuator to be available to your users outside. So if we can open up your Spring Boot properties file,
of course,
then there will be an admin server port. So something like that.
we just look for admin stuff and then admin. That's Kafka for some reason.
I can get the exact property if you want, but. What that will do, it will actually start, it will run a second servlet container, but with low resource overhead, and listen on a different port, so that the web users will never be able to access your actuator.
Yeah.
It's called
Management.
management server ports.
That's under Spring or still in the open?
No, it's in the
No,
open
here we go.
environment.
Management. Oh, that's why I wasn't finding it. I was underneath Spring.
Okay. Server port, yeah. Okay, and then 8081 or something. Yeah. Okay, and also now you can do endpoint Prometheus enabled through, endpoint metrics enabled through. So yeah, okay, and then endpoint metrics enabled through. Yeah, and there is one more which is on the same level as endpoint, and it's called metrics export.
How much?
Metrics
Export? There's a bunch of stuff there.
export Prometheus enabled as well.
Oh.
Well, I didn't make this that complex. It's Spring config.
Yeah.
Okay, so 8082 is fine too. And I have another one underneath endpoints. So you have endpoint, but apparently you have also endpoints. And then there is web exposure include star. Yeah. Between quotes. I'm not sure if it's relevant. Okay, so if you rerun this, we should be able to access localhost 8082. And also the interesting thing is we don't need to expose this port via a service on Kubernetes, because we just need Prometheus to come and scrape us.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, and then Prometheus is able to do that even though there's not a service that lists 8082. It just knows it can access the pods or something.
Yeah, because Nginx can also immediately access pods. So through
yeah.
the API, they were able to do that.
So then we'll go to 8082/actuator then, I guess.
Okay, so now we
Okay,
have a
I've
lot
got
more.
more
We
stuff,
have like flyway, and we will be able. Okay, and then /Prometheus, and it's like a key value format. It's not doing that.
Maybe it's I spelled it wrong. No.
Prometheus. And the dependency, you can see it in IntelliJ. So on the left side in the Project Explorer.
Yeah, hang on.
Command, at the bottom left. Prometheus.
Nah.
Nah, okay.
The probably
Yeah,
a wrong thing
so
here.
I will like to need to
Maybe I need a different repository?
No, it should be in the Spring.
It's in Maven Central.
Yeah.
I didn't specify a version though. So it should also be it's Spring version bound then? Like I mean what's it called? Using the Spring dependency management
Yeah,
stuff.
the bomb.
Okay,
Yeah.
then that's
It should.
should be working. Yeah.
Let me quickly check. My computer just see Prometheus. Yeah, should.
Yeah, whatever, some version.
And then Gradle. IO micrometer.
Yeah.
Maybe copy paste it just to be sure, because it should include it, right?
Yeah. Ugh, oh god. It says copy to clipboard, but I really just wanted the one thing. Because this uses the old.
Yeah.
So, implementation.
Maybe we just need to IntelliJ, because you don't have enabled auto import.
Yeah, but
So-
I imported it earlier.
Yeah, but did you do it after started actuator, or did you re-import after?
I think I did it twice, but yeah, you know,
Mm.
let's just be sure about this. So this is the one I needed.
Yeah.
and the one I had was
Wait, okay, it is gone.
exactly the same.
Okay, then it's import changes.
Nee, there's something different. Nee, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Import changes.
It needs to be on the class path.
Yeah.
It's normal that it doesn't give an error, but it should.
Yeah, also you see how slow this is. I mean, that's why I don't have the auto import enabled.
Ah, okay.
Like especially if you start adding stuff to your Gradle script, then it goes like
Yeah, I have the feeling that the Kotlin script is a bit slower
yeah,
than
a bit. That's an understatement.
I was thinking about switching one of these pet projects to that, but now I'm not
Yeah.
going to do it anymore.
Yeah, but it seems like they are improving it though. That like it goes faster every time. Yeah, let's try Prometheus.
Yeah,
there we
okay,
go.
okay.
Okay, so now we just rerun.
Want some water?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. Alright. So this looks like it's about to be deployed. And then we can access Prometheus URL normally, or we should see it in here for sure. Yeah, there it is. So now Prometheus, this is the output that we're getting. So if we then repackage this into a jar and then do another Docker build from it, and then then we'll need to Docker push it again, I guess, to right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just thinking out loud. Right. Let's add that to a commit somewhere as well. So here we added actuator in a different port with Prometheus format, or how do you call it? Like
Yeah. It's the Prometheus format.
okay.
It's also really easy to add. Oh, you added a
By
Yeah.
somehow.
It's also really easy to add your own metrics that will get picked up by the Prometheus metrics,
What do you mean add your own metrics?
like business metrics. How many tasks you completed for a certain challenge,
Ah yeah.
and then you can plot it on a graph in Grafana.
Oh my god.
That's what I once did with the Quake on
With the
Kubernetes.
Quake, yeah. I looked at that stuff and I was like, I can't understand any of this actually.
But you will be able to start understanding it now that you
yeah,
have.
yeah, this gives me way more context.
Uh,
Right, so we need a rebuild, and I forget where we did that. It was in here, I think.
Yeah.
It was just this one,
Yeah.
and it'll just rebuild.
Yeah.
And then after that, we don't even need to. Do we need to do another apply now? Don't we need to say that we need Prometheus, or is it like a global level?
So, no, that will be the next step. So we'll actually, while it's building, we can already do this.
Yeah.
So you can have a drink.
No. Let's open up the deployment YAML,
Yes.
and then we'll. Let's keep that up here. We need to add something
To the
like
deployment.
this stuff.
No.
Wait, why is it to the deployment?
We're adding just an annotation to the deployment because this contains the spec, and this is what will provide the Prometheus data.
Yeah, okay.
So it's at this level. You don't need a service. You don't need an ingress.
Yeah.
It's just here where you say, "Hey Prometheus, I have something for you."
Okay.
So underneath the metadata, so we have a label there now. So underneath the template, you can now add annotations at the same level as metadata. So
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, notation. It should autocomplete.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's going so slow now that I'm not sure.
It's actually it's one. It's at the same level as labels. Sorry. So annotations are also considered metadata.
Okay.
So yeah, okay, and then you can just say Prometheus.io.
Now we don't have completion because it's annotation
yeah,
specific
completely custom.
and that's specific to your Kubernetes instance basically.
Yeah, yeah. It
Okay.
will work because I have Prometheus installed.
Okay.
Prometheus.io slash path, and then it's the colon, and then between double quotes the path. So slash.
Actuator.
Yeah.
But then we need the port saying 8082
Yeah,
though.
so we'll copy paste this annotation and add two more. Yeah. So we'll need a port, which will be 8082.
Yeah.
And
that's not a string probably.
It's also a string, yeah.
It's also a
it
string.
only knows strings.
Yeah, there's no type stuff.
Yeah, and then there's a scrape saying true, which is also a string. And that's like, hey Prometheus, come scrape me. Because for the other two there are defaults, but this is really the trigger on which it will come and scrape.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that. Our build is completed, so we can Docker push again. I had Docker build it. We had that in some of these. Fuck off!
Which is a you skipped it. It's really nice.
Yeah, well, I'll do it later then. I skipped a version. I didn't do it later. Okay.
Yeah, but you can
We'll
probably.
I'll do it later. Why is it nice?
It had a couple of nice features, like you can have a custom status bar here where you have CPU and memory and some things.
So we'll do a Docker build again of this.
Yes, and then we'll push it again.
We'll push it again.
Yeah, what we'll probably need to do as well is add the image pool policy and change it to always.
We did it already.
We already?
Yeah,
okay,
because we copied it.
Good. Yeah. Then basically it should restart it and.
But we haven't applied the new thing yet.
Okay, as soon as we apply it, the chances are that it will automatically restart it and that everything will just work.
Okay. Let's check that.
Yeah.
So that means in here somewhere we've got the apply already going. So we just do this.
Yeah. And then it will say configured. And if you go to the entry, you will actually see the pod changing.
The pod changing.
Yeah, it will get killed and a new one would get
quickly
created.
to default. And then
it will probably it's already happened. So if you click F8 deployment,
you see this really fast though.
A few seconds ago.
Yeah.
Now, if you click on Grafana, we'll go to the built-in Grafana from Ranger. So it installs this on the cluster.
I see.
Yeah. And then if you need to log in, so it's the door with the arrow, sign in.
This confuses me. Why do we need to log in?
We're going to create a dashboard.
But log into Grafana that's also running on the same Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Jesus
so
Christ.
I think
do your thing. Admin, okay.
Yeah, it will actually already be admin. Oh yeah, okay, and okay. So now we'll need to add a dashboard. Now, let's not waste any time on creating a dashboard, because if you browse to grafana.org, they actually have like a really nice dashboard searching thing. So Grafana at the top, and then dashboards at the Okay, and here we can search within this list and say Spring Boot. With a space probably. And there is one, and let's filter on Prometheus as a data source. Yeah, they support a lot of data sources. Yeah.
Nee, I thought that was a search
No,
button.
it's maybe just. Well, okay,
Maybe
it's
dashboard.
this one. Oh,
Oh.
sorry. No. Yeah, I think it refreshed. It was just, but it's this one with 8,500 downloads. So if you click it, okay, and then if you go back to Grafana, we saw this number, so like 4701, and if
Yeah.
you go back to Grafana in Rancher,
Yeah.
you can just add the plus sign, import, and then type 4701
Where?
here in
Oh.
the dashboard URL or ID, and then load. It will ask us for a data source, so select the Prometheus data source, which you can say Rancher monitoring, which is fine, and then import.
How did it know that this was a Rancher monitoring one?
Because the Grafana and the Prometheus have been set up together, so it was predefined using.
This is
Grafana.
fine?
This is fine. Import, and it will already show you some metrics. Normally, application none, but you should be able to select your FN application. Okay.
How does it know namespace is cattle Prometheus, so it's not in the default one?
No, that's where this is installed.
Ah,
but
okay.
It should be namespace agnostic. Okay. Okay, debugging this is also possible. But then we'll need to port forward to Prometheus. So if you go to K9S.
Yeah. I think it was here that I had it running at some point.
Can you quickly check the logs? Because
looks complicated. Yes, it is. You missed all the easy stuff.
well, this still is quite easy, but now let's first make sure that it's running the new version of the application.
Yeah.
So that if we check the logs, that we can see a reference to 8082. So the admin port, that is definitely listening on that port.
Ah, you mean in the Spring Boot
Yes.
output?
So
yeah.
just in Rancher, for example.
Ah, okay.
Or here, whatever.
And Rancher. We go to
This
the
one and check the logs.
yeah. Okay. So this is our Spring Boot web app running.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 8082,
Yeah,
which is
it's being
fine,
exposed.
and it's okay.
Yeah.
And okay, and then can
And then
you quickly click the hamburger menu on the top left and say View Edit YAML, which should, if you scroll down a little bit, so this is the same YAML that we uploaded, but with some metadata.
It adds stuff now and then. Or
Yeah, it's
Okay.
stuff all the time. Okay, this is fine too.
What are you looking at now, though?
I was checking if the annotations were definitely present.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's fine. Okay, then we'll use K9S to port forward to Prometheus.
Yeah. Because Prometheus is gonna. Did you try Flutter? Okay, so now.
That's a front end.
Yeah, that's a front end. We haven't, or I haven't tried it out yet. But yeah, it's on the list.
I know somebody in Kortrijk who's doing Flutter.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, maybe you can do a whole tour.
Yeah,
of
do a whole tour. Like we learned Kubernetes today, and then we'll learn Flutter.
And then you have a map, and then you can say what you learned where.
That should be cool.
Okay.
We'll do K9S then,
Yeah.
and then do some port forwarding on.
NS.
Is there a way to get the commands? Like, is it just help or something?
Oh yeah, it's something like that. I can't remember. It's the Cattle Prometheus one.
This one.
Yeah,
And then we'll
Prometheus cluster monitoring.
Prometheus cluster monitoring.
Yeah, and then this one we need a web. So port forward Shift F.
On which one?
Go down one. It should be that one. Yeah, and then shift.
This
F.
is auth though.
Yeah, maybe try the proxy. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not.
Okay.
Then it should be. This should go, right?
Yeah. Maybe it would work, but I'm not sure.
So
Okay.
that should be 80, and then this
Pick
is going to
something.
be 1990 or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, then we go to 1990. We should get a web UI. Yeah, which is fine. And then we can go to status. And then we have targets. So it rewrites this dynamically, and if we scroll down a bit, we should actually see your Effit app in here somewhere. You can also search.
Yeah, I mean, if you were gonna look, it's not listed though.
It's not listed. That's
That might be the
disappointing.
problem then. So Prometheus, okay, so hang on, because Shamroth added a question. Maybe we don't want to automatically turn off our TV because then OBS is gonna crash as well. So let's not make it power off. So Shamroth, if you only know JavaScript, don't worry. I'll try and briefly explain what we're doing. So I'm running a web app. I'm using Vue.js as a front-end framework, but for every HTML page, you need some place to host it. And before I was running deploying my web application in a Spring Boot web app on Heroku. But today we deployed, Kris and me, we deployed the same Spring Boot web app, which contains the Vue.js part on a Kubernetes cluster. And it's a way to get easy scaling, manage services to a database and stuff like that. So basically we're in the operations world right now. And the last thing that we tried to do now was to get a better monitoring through a Prometheus library, basically, which supplies monitoring data in a certain format, so that a Prometheus client, which is running on the Kubernetes cluster, to provide nice output to Grafana.
Mm-hmm.
And Freddy asks, so you use Docker? So yes. What I do is I package, my Gradle build, it will package all of my Java app classes and Spring Boot and stuff like that, and the Vue.js distributable into a static folder. It packages that in a jar. Then from the jar we create a Docker image, and that Docker image gets pushed to Kubernetes, and then magic happens.
Yeah. Okay, but apparently it did not pick it up.
Yeah.
So maybe I haven't tried this with the built-in monitoring. So let's quickly install a different Prometheus, which will definitely work.
Okay.
So if you go back to the engine, so we already talked about Helm today, and that it makes it easy to install apps. So that's also something Ren should add. So if you go to apps, you will actually get a catalog. Okay, we already have another Prometheus running, which is really nice. Then just click on one of the 80, so, no, not this one. You could hover the links and then the second one, hover, that's a Grafana. If you hover the next one, it's a Prometheus. Yeah, so click it. It should give us the same data, and now go to targets there.
Status and targets.
And then, okay, so this also does not have a effect, right?
Yeah, I don't see it in any case. It does have.
It
has
does,
IP addresses. There we go. Yeah.
So it's just a pod. This is awesome. So that means if you go.
Wait, so we were going to the wrong dashboard or something?
No. So I have multiple Prometheuses running on the same cluster, and apparently one picks up annotations automatically, but Turbo isn't configured to do
okay,
so. So
okay.
we were using the wrong one, so we can close this page.
This one can go
Yeah.
because that's just Rancher or no, that's
Yeah.
Prometheus. Yeah.
Yeah. And now if you click the second 80 port there, yeah, that's
This
a
one.
Grafana. Yeah.
That's monitoring
Yeah,
dashboards.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a Grafana.
Yeah.
It's fancy figures. Let's sign in again. Maybe this one has a password.
Yeah.
I'll try. Okay. Yeah, this is fine. Click the plus sign again, and then it's like 4701
40. Yeah. For the
import.
damn it.
Grafana might become really slow if you zoom in because it's like JavaScript intensive. 4701, and we should even see the data retroactively because it was okay. So there is one, yeah, that one. It's a different Prometheus
data source. Yeah.
Oh, there it already is. So we now see the uptime. We see when it was started. We see how much heap it's using. We get some memory metrics. If you scroll, I think you need to not scale it.
Unzoom.
Okay, this should be better. Oh,
It's still. I think I probably zoomed again or something. I don't know.
and you can change the time frame.
Hey. Change the time frame where though?
At the top right. So now
Oh,
it's on
this is-
24 hours.
This is super slow. Yeah, here. Okay, yeah. And let's not do last 24 hours, but
Last 15 minutes, and then we should get some nicer graphs.
looking for it. Okay. Nice.
See, so now we actually have a technical view on our application that's running on Kubernetes.
Damn, dude.
And what it does, it's just going to the application every few minutes to get the data that's being exposed.
Yeah. All right.
And we can do this with business metrics as well.
Yeah. And then you just add your own custom data points, basically, through your business metrics, basically.
Yeah.
And then they get outputted through Prometheus format.
And then you can
Picks
create
it up,
graphs
and then you
using
graph it.
this.
Yummy!
That's cool.
Yummy! Yummy!
It's so easy to do all of this stuff. It scares me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it usually works pretty well out of the box.
Wow, yeah.
I'm just going to show you one more thing. I think we're not going to do the database
Yeah,
migration.
no.
But you should browse to landscape.cncf.io to get really scared.
Landscape CNCF.
.io.
And this is the ecosystem of all of the
Cloud native. Yeah.
dude.
So a lot of the tools we talked about and saw today are listed
Yeah.
here. But it's
Who was
still
it?
loading.
Shemiroth. If you wanted to get an idea of how less we know, this makes it even more explicit, I guess. Oh my god.
So a lot of the tools like Rancher, etcd, the distributed database, Prometheus, Grafana, they're
Yeah,
all
these
on
are
here.
just icons, I guess you can.
No, you can
Other
actually
stuff.
click them and get some information and
Am I gonna be really? Okay, this is limited still. Okay,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
hope. There is hope. All right. Cloud native landscape.
yeah.
Cool. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciated it. It's super cool.
I'm glad we got everything working pretty smooth.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to plug before we close off the stream?
If you want this in production quality, hire Triple D.
Yeah. Nice.
We
spam that.
know what we're talking about usually, so
Yeah, I mean, if anything, this stream was a testament to just that. Actually, Triple KD.io, was it, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And we should write some more blog posts and do some more knowledge sharing. But we hang out at the Socrates
Yeah.
meetups.
Yeah,
and,
indeed.
We
So-
can,
If you're from Belgium, come to the Socrates meetups. Just visit the meetup platform. Go to or find Socrates. That's software crafting and testing. That's about it, I think. Are you going to the Socrates BE conference in November?
Yeah.
Cool, me too.
yeah,
Nice.
it's always really nice. So,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
we're actually going to do a session on an app we're building now, which is event sourced. It's
Okay.
Kotlin.
Okay,
It uses Kotlin React on the front end.
right.
It also deploys. We have a little more operation tools around it. Jaeger for tracing.
Yeah, that's it's like Zipkin kind of
Yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah,
Okay.
same thing.
Yeah.
Also, exception handling using Sentry. So if there's
Yeah,
an error
nice.
in the application, we
Yeah.
get a mail.
And
So-
you're doing all of this in one session of an hour. or-
No, we're going to see how we're going to do sessions around it. But for example, the event sourcing can be a session on
Yeah,
its own.
okay.
It's a poker application.
Okay, that should be
So,
fun.
we're trying to finish it. We will do sessions on the modeling of the domain as well, that sort of thing.
Great.
The operations was actually the really easy part there.
Okay. In the meanwhile, the ice cream truck is coming by. The Edelweiss ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Koen and Ilse, get your ice cream there in Moerbeke-Waas. You've heard it here first.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Kris, thanks again for hosting as well. And,
Really welcome.
stuff. Nice. Alright, so thanks for hanging out and asking questions. I hope to see you, I think it'll be next week probably. Next week in the weekend. I don't know yet. Just follow me on Twitter or click on the notifications thing on Twitch, and then I'll see you then. Until then, peace, bye.
Okay.